This session is general Q&A with panelists Kevin Durkee of the South Coast AQMD, Manisha Singh of the California Air Resources Board, and Gwen Yoshimura of US EPA Region 9, moderated by Greg Galani of the California Air Resources Board.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next session. This is our Q&A session with our panel of experts in which you can ask any questions regarding the training or anything that is on your mind of our panel of experts. Greg Galani will be the one moderating this session, and I will hand it over to him to introduce himself and the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Galani. I'm the manager of the quality management section. Congratulations on making it this far in the training, the end of day 3. We're almost there. So I'll be the moderator of this panel, and I'm going to hand it off to the panelists, who are the various subject matter experts, to answer your questions. Let's start with Gwen Yoshimura, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the end of this excellent PQAO training. Happy to be here with you all virtually. I'm Gwen Yoshimura. I manage the Air Quality Analysis Office in EPA Region 9. The Air Quality Analysis Office consists of air quality monitoring, modeling, and emissions inventory work. And I've been at EPA Region 9 since 2009, and prior to that, I was with EPA Region 7 for 5 years. I have worked in air quality planning as well as a little bit in air toxics, and then in monitoring, and now as the office manager. So thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to today's discussion. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. Manisha, do you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Manisha Singh, and I'm the Chief of the Quality Management Branch here at California Air Resources Board's Monitoring and Laboratory Division. Amongst other areas, I am responsible for overseeing the implementation of the PQAO program requirements for CARB. And to that end, this training that my team has put together for you, I hope you were all able to make the most of this training, especially this time. We couldn't meet you all in person, but perhaps having a remote forum provided an opportunity for more of you and the staff to participate in the training. And while, just a little bit of a background about me, I have been in this position for almost 2.5 years now. I joined just before the previous PQAO training in 2019. And before that, I have been with CARB since 2008, involved with the regulatory programs development for emission reductions from fuels. And I also oversee here the regulatory programs that have emission reductions from mobile sources. I do have my roots in air monitoring. I am by training an air pollution researcher. Specifically, all of my research was related to PM measurement technologies, as well as exposure measurement. So I certainly understand, the importance of the data, because that is the quality of the data is what you need, to make sound judgments for health effects that may be attributable to these, pollutants, and then finally informs all of the policy decisions that go in managing the air quality. So before I pass it along to Kevin, I do wanted to take a few moments here, to thank the team behind today's PQAO training. It was a huge team effort, collaborative effort with the team at CARB, spanning monitoring and lab division, as well as our planning colleagues, but also with a collaborative effort with the staff from EPA, South Coast, and other districts, and all of you, and experts from the district, so that, I hope that we were able to provide a training that meets your interests and reflects, what is the district staff looking for in terms of both guidance and refreshers of all of our programs that we are running here. I would like to give a shout out to the Curriculum Advisory Committee. They were, I believe, 18 or so members from various areas, from planning to monitoring to lab, and just the amount of effort that goes in planning this the curriculum that reflects all areas of interest for you all. I provide really a thankful appreciation for them and their time. From the team here in quality management branch, the QMS staff, as well as staff from monitoring and lab and the planning division participated in that curriculum advisory committee, as well as all of you. They, of course, cannot be left behind. All of the speakers, there have been so many great presentations in the last 3 days. Very informative, some of them entertaining, obviously. It keeps the momentum and the engagement of the program live. So certainly appreciate that. And then lastly, my panelists here, Gwen, for taking time, and Kevin, to taking time here to be available to answer questions for the program is much appreciated. Lee and Grace, a big shout out to the two of you. You are the the brains behind this whole coordination of the program. So thank you, everybody, and I look forward to the discussion today. And I also thank all of you. There have been like more than 290, I think, registrants so far. So really greatly appreciate the time that you have put in the last 3 days to attend the training. And thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I want to second that. Lee and Grace, everyone who was involved in participating in developing the training, the curriculum, we really appreciate it. It wouldn't happen without you guys. But especially Lee and Grace, last 2 years, really since the end of the last training, the planning starts for this one. And Lee and Grace did a great job getting us here. So just thanks, guys. Appreciate all your hard work. Kevin?
Hi, so I'm Kevin Durkee. I've been the Quality Assurance Manager at South Coast AQMD for 4 years now. My previous life at AQMD was 28 years in planning, as initially a meteorologist and air quality specialist, where I really learned a lot about instrumentation on the meteorology side, but really didn't have any direct air monitoring experience other than analysis of air monitoring data. I became the senior meteorologist of the meteorology and air quality assessment group. And then I left in 2017 to become the QA manager in the monitoring and analysis division. And that's been really an eye-opening experience. I've learned a lot over the last 4 years, coming in thinking, oh, how hard can this be, to really feeling like, 4 years later, I still don't know it all, and there's still a lot to learn. And this training is a big part of helping with that. And I really appreciate that CARB has put this on, every few years, and it helps us all. I'm also really happy to see Gwen and Manisha here, because they'll be able to answer all the questions that I can't. So I think with that, let's get on with it.
Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just reminding people, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. I'm not currently seeing any, but we'll wait a minute.
While we're waiting, maybe I'll just second Manisha's sentiments and Kevin's. These PQAO trainings have really been fantastic, and I think the new format worked really well this this time around. We're all sort of adapting and finding new ways to do work in our current COVID situation. And I know that for some folks at EPA who recorded presentations, it took a number of times to get it down to a recording that they were pleased with. So I think in the end, it might have actually been more time than if we were doing it live, just because, you know, there are some perfectionists in the monitoring world, but, you know, I think it's fantastic to have recordings that are available that everyone can view later on, especially if you have new staff or if anybody wants a refresher or you weren't able to attend at the specific time during the session. So thank you so much to everyone who pre-recorded, put all of that time and effort and energy into doing a really great job and having these training materials available for everyone in the PQAO. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gwen. We have some questions coming in now. The first one, has CARB ever had legal case studies related to data?
I am not aware of one, but that doesn't mean that, you know, there may not have been some prior to my, you know, my tenure here at CARB. Perhaps there would be some cases that the planning for you know, folks here may be aware of, and so, you know, I'm going to check with them if there are anyone from CARB who's aware of it, of any kind of a legal challenge specifically to data. You know, we have had other legal challenges, of course, on various programs and regulatory programs that we implement. So I've been involved in others, but I'm not aware of specific related to data, air monitoring data. Yeah, other CARB folks, please chime in through chat.
South Coast definitely has had challenges over the years, probably more so with toxics data than with criteria data. But we do follow you know, EPA guidelines and you know, basically follow the NAST program or the PAMS program, you know, where applicable for our toxics measurements, and it gives us a good backbone for you know, defending our position in those kind of situations.
Thanks all. So the next question, making a big assumption that'll be in person. So the next session will be in Northern or Southern California?
Good question. I think we should take votes, but I know from my from what I've heard of the previous PQA trainings, you know, we have alternative between North and South. I believe this is the 6th training. Last time around when we did on-site, we had a training in Davis. So then the next, I think we have Southern California lined up. And I hope we could meet in person when we do this next time. I do want to mention now that one of my colleagues, Ken, has shared information about the only legal challenge that you know, he's familiar with, and it was related to data collected to support some enforcement actions relating to special purpose fence line monitoring. So it seems like we do have had at least one such instance. But again, you know, I think the context for this question and the importance of this question lies with all of the efforts that we are putting here, you know, to make the data quality withstand legal challenges. You know, the data has to be technically and legally defensible. And so the entire quality assurance program and internal quality management programs that we are all, you know, here committed to is, frankly, you know, there is always a possibility of legal challenge, and we have to, when we take the data and store it and throughout the life cycle of the data, to make sure that, you know, the quality would withstand a potential legal challenge.
Thank you. So next question, what are the most common issues seen within air monitoring programs?
So Kevin, unless want to talk about South Coast, for us, I could go later.
I'm glad to. I think probably depends on who you ask, which group, but I think our biggest problems have been completeness issues, due to a lot of different things, but sometimes it's staffing, sometimes it's COVID, sometimes it's not being able to access a site because of construction activities that the site owner is implementing that we just can't access. And one thing, I don't mind airing our dirty laundry a little bit. We had TSA finding related to completeness in terms of design values, and that was something that really struck me that I hadn't been thinking about as much. You can have 75% completeness over a year, but still have 1 month of lead data that's not complete, and still be off on your design value. You won't have a valid design value. So that's something we really started to look at closely. And same for PM10. If you miss a big chunk of a quarter, if you don't have a complete quarter, you will not have a complete design value for 3 design value periods. So three consecutive years of design values. So it can be a pretty significant thing for us.
Thank you, Kevin. Next question. I guess this is for Gwen. How about EPA level related, how about at the EPA level related to data issues, about legal issues with the data?
Yeah, so sometimes data issues don't reach the legal point. So, EPA will assess data before we use it, and sometimes a line will be drawn prior to us using the data in decision making, such that the data are not considered of appropriate quality for us to actually take action on. I know, for example, that happened with a source in Arizona. We had what we thought was good quality data from the site, but there wasn't a quality assurance project plan in place. And at the time, headquarters said, given that, they did not think it was appropriate for us to take action based on that data, and that it was too much of a legal vulnerability. There were additional factors in that. As we all know, QAPs are required before you start collecting data. So that certainly is a vulnerability. I think that in this specific instance, there was a contractor that was doing the work. So there was some documentation. It wasn't in the like full form of a QAP. So we had thought that perhaps we had sufficient information to move forward. But in the end, headquarters decided that that was not possible or not appropriate in this instance. So that's one example where you get stopped moving forward before you actually get to any sort of legal challenge. There have been quite a number of legal challenges involving exceptional events data. There have been times when, like with designations, EPA has looked more closely at quality assurance information, supporting the underlying data that would be used in those designations decisions, and determined that there were critical criteria that were not met, and therefore those data were not used in the decision making. Or were considered invalid in that instance. Those are the instances that I can think of off the top of my head.
Greg, if you don't mind, could we go back to the question on monitoring? The question was, what are the challenges, that CARB has faced in the monitoring area? And, there is a separate group here, and of course CARB does monitoring we have several monitoring sites, and if anybody who tuned in to Adolfo's presentation earlier in these sessions, he talked about his experience coming on as a manager for the monitoring in the southern region here, and having set up several new sites. He had to relocate. So over the last couple of years, really, ARB has had challenges in terms of having to move sites or relocate sites. So that has been the biggest challenge, in the recent times. And I do have a word of request from my colleagues in the monitoring branch that any help that the districts can provide in securing sites would be much appreciated, because we have to get leases, and it's networking is needed. You need some suggestions, recommendations, and support in getting the sites set up. So just a request from my monitoring colleagues here that I'd like to pass along to.
One other thing to mention in response to that question, Bilal Kazaz from EPA spoke about some of the repeating or bigger issues that we've seen on our technical systems audit. So that presentation, I believe, will be available also, of course, and was given yesterday at 11:40. So if folks are interested in that, please take a look, and that will give you some perspective about what things we observe on our technical systems audits.
Thanks, everybody. Kevin, can you tell us about your lab electronic documentation system, background or status?
Yeah, so that's our Equus system that we're working with a vendor on. It's been a long road. Our staff know what they want, but time for the vendor to do upgrades and get things where we want them has been slow. But we are making progress. We did an initial round of field testing, went back to the vendor with suggestions and things that definitely needed to be changed. And we are now just starting a second round of field testing for it's basically an electronic chain of custody system. And we're starting that at 2 of our sites, Central LA and Ruby-Doo, pretty much as we speak. So hopefully that goes smoothly and we can start, expanding it beyond that by, I'd say by 2023.
Thank you. Sorry, the questions are jumping around in the page. So back on the legal cases, has any stakeholder used quality of our data as justification to dispute a regulation? For example, has anyone said that we can't impose a regulation on industries when our data may have uncertainties around them?
It's a good question, and certainly, to the point of the discussion here. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not aware of any legal challenges other than the one that Ken mentioned through the few years of tenure that I've had here. But I can envision this being a vulnerability, certainly a risk, where as we are generating data, it has to be legally defensible. CARB is sued frequently on several regulations where we have our analyses, put to the test of legal credibility. All of the actions, of course, there has been many cases that I'm aware of, other than the air monitoring data, but it does look like there were some fence line, possibly refinery fence line support data that had some enforcement actions resulting from that, and that which was challenged in court. So I don't have any specific examples that I'm aware of to share, and I also invite others who are participating in the training, and other panelists, perhaps Gwen, you have some examples to share from EPA perspective. Of course, legal vulnerability is a key area, right? That, we like to address as we develop all of our quality management programs.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that is directly responsive to this question. I think that oftentimes, to me, this question sounds more like questions around control regulations, emissions inventories, and emission factors, and fence line monitoring, as Manisha, you mentioned. And to be honest, I am less familiar with the controls realm of things. So if someone would like us to follow up in more detail, we certainly can. And if so, I think our emails are available, and feel free to email us.
Yeah, I second that. So if there are any specific questions, feel free to follow up with either of us, and I can actually find out from others in CARB if there has been specific challenges around these other programs that we have, to control sources.
Okay, next question. As resources, staffing issues arise, not only for air monitoring during the pandemic, I've noticed a trend that blends departments, planning, enforcement, etc., with air monitoring. What are some of the suggestions to maneuver those challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll start us off. I think that having very clear roles and responsibilities laid out, especially in your quality documents, so that the structure and any potential overlap is really carefully thought through. QA independence is always a very central tenet to any QA management system. So you want to make sure that your lines of responsibility are clearly defined, and that you aren't having any conflicts of interest there.
Yeah, I can't say that we've ever experienced that where we've merged groups within the district. There's quite a lot of separation between our divisions and our offices. That's not to say that we haven't poached people from compliance and different things, but of course they would go through our typical training process and be subject to all the regular processes that we go through as monitoring people. So
Yeah, I hear you when you ask that question. We all acknowledge what the last year and how challenging it was to continue to meet our mandates, and then deal with the challenges that were imposed due to health restrictions, even personal situations and such. Well, if I were to think of one thing, where how do we deal with the limitations of resources? I am thinking of all of the technologies, especially any kind of automation that you can include in your monitoring systems. I've heard about most of the districts, they have data collection systems now that are not manual. So most all have moved to just automated data collection systems. I'm thinking from our own shop, and I oversee the quality assurance program here, that we are exploring areas where there could be some ways of automating or checking some of the concentrations for our audits. There was a presentation by Aaron last year or last time, and we haven't gotten too much out in exploring those areas. But he talked about even I don't think they're called drones, but they are. It's just that we should leverage technology is what I'm trying to get to. Any technological advances, I'm sure there are vendors listening to this conversation, and they would be coming or marketing with some solutions so that, we could replace, to the extent possible, manual processes with automated processes. So that is just one area where everything is being automated these days, and perhaps to the extent, not to compromise on quality. But if anything could be done more remotely, we can have data systems that could be accessed remotely. You don't have to go to the site for some of the jobs, that could save time and travel, right? So those are the areas where one could brainstorm, in individual organizations, and see within your structure which areas might benefit from technologies and automation. Got to do, with what we have, but more efficiently.
Yeah, and I would add that, certainly your folks at EPA are happy to brainstorm with you if you are encountering those challenges at your organization. And I'm sure Manisha's folks the same.
Absolutely. If you have some ideas, feel free to run by us.
Next question. Have you run into feedback from agencies when transitioning to TTP, expressing difficulties with respect to ozone generation during QC and calibrations, where BPC doesn't seem to be correcting and bringing into line ozone concentrations as expected for those checks?
It's a fairly technical question for my team. If Ranjit is online, I would have him put something in the chat, but I'll open up to Kevin. Kevin, you've been more boots on the ground.
Yeah, and we had already gone through the probe, ozone QC checks and the daily QC and drills and spans and everything before I got to the division, so I wasn't that much of a part of that whole process, but it seemed to go fairly well. I can put you in touch with people at the district that have good experience making that work. But as a standalone PQAO, we don't, we're not working with other agencies necessarily to like CARB would be. But yeah, we're definitely willing to help in any way we can. And also, one thing to always remember is the PQAO Air Monitoring Committee is a really good place to bring up issues and see what other people are doing. Those monthly meetings have been really valuable.
Yeah, I second that, Kevin. If you would like, for us to support you in any way, or from the CARB team, of course, feel free to contact me or Ranjit Puller. But PQAO monitoring calls are certainly a very, it's been pretty helpful in the last year or so that I have, now noticed. Now we have Zoom meetings. There is an opportunity to interact even more than what we used to be able to do through phone calls. So, there could be brainstorming, maybe work groups set up, to see how, if one district has had success in surmounting a technical issue, then they could share their processes with the others. And that way, we could work throughout the PQA in a collaborative manner and share from the wisdom of others.
And I think that question might have actually come from outside of the CARB PQAO. So certainly feel free to reach out to your AQAO monitoring contact, and we can follow up on that question more in detail as well.
Next question. Are there any corrective actions due to NPAP audit results?
So National Performance Audit Program, I would say that in cases where people fail the NPAP audit, then we ask them to check their system and make sure that everything is operating as it should be. Typically, the National the NPAP program is to check consistency across the nation. So oftentimes there aren't specific actions or results that we would that would be cause for data invalidation, but it is potentially an indication that something is a little bit off in your system. So we use them in that respect.
Next question. It seems like wildfires are an unfortunate reality in Western US. These wildfires seem to break records year after year. What are your thoughts about the current EE process and what might need to be considered fundamentally moving forward for the impacts on air quality data in relation to NAAQS attainment?
Who wants to go first? I guess I can say a little bit about it. I haven't done the exceptional event process for a few years now, but back in my days as senior meteorologist, I submitted quite a few. Even before that, with the exceptional or the natural events policy that existed before the rule was promulgated. I did a lot of work with that, especially for wildfires and for high wind dust events. So it's been an ongoing complaint that there's room for improvement, and there has been a lot of improvement over the last few years. Especially there's better guidance, there's better examples, there's Clearinghouse webpage, and there's a lot of support from CARB and a lot of support from EPA's Region 9 staff, at least, to help us with that process and to hopefully not waste our time, doing analyses that aren't needed. That said, it's still a cumbersome process and it's time consuming, and to actually get something all the way through the process, especially if it was an ozone event or something that's not as clear cut, it's a lot of work and a lot of staff time that could be going to something else arguably more important maybe. But so I think there is a lot of room still to revisit and find places where process can be simplified and streamlined even more. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I'll just add to Kevin's remarks a little bit. I think we certainly recognize here in Region 9, exceptional events are incredibly challenging. I agree. I think that was Sam that commented. It seems like it's going to be an ongoing challenge for us here in the West, and that we are all going to be affected over the years by wildfires. With the upcoming PM NAAQS, that's under review right now. It's unclear what will actually happen, but in the eventuality that they do revise that NAAQS down and make it more stringent, then I think that we expect there will be a need for exceptional events work to be done, and likely in a fairly fast fashion, which we're all working with limited resources, and adding exceptional events workload on top of everything that you all already do is a very significant lift. So we certainly recognize that. I know that folks here in EPA Region 9 in my office have been thinking about, what additional tools can we set up so that if this happens, we are well positioned to at least have, templates like Kevin was saying, or tools, or, streamlined processes that will allow us all to get through this without losing our minds. I think it's going to be challenging, and it's going to be an ongoing effort that we'll all need to think through. We appreciate, the ideas that you all bring to the table in brainstorming how we can still satisfy the statutory and regulatory requirements within that are laid out for the exceptional events rule, but also make it so that we can all achieve the end goal of really, making good decisions protecting human health in the environment, but also recognizing events that are outside of state or local jurisdictions' controls. So I think, you know, as we move forward, that will be it will continue to be an ongoing conversation, and we look forward to having those discussions with you all.
Thanks, everybody. Sandra, do we have time for one more question? I see we're at time based on the schedule, but one more?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so how does the QA manager communicate with the monitoring organizations, feedback on reviews if there are any data quality issues?
So I can speak to CAR PQAO. We have our QA team here, our Ranjit, and all of the auditors. We visit the sites and the audits. What I understand of our process is that it's a fast feed loop process where right on the spot, when we actually do the audit, the results are available right there and are shared with the site operator, so that if there are any issues that are seen during the audit, that there is not much of a lag as far as communicating potential for data being impacted. Then of course we also have more of a formalized process of issuing the audit report after the audit is over, and that all of the data issues are communicated through the AQDA process, through an investigative process, and a resolution, of course, with in mind, and a timely resolution at that. So that's how we, in the CAR PQA, we have the AQDA process. There is also the corrective action process, which could be undertaken for the other types of issues that we see that are not directly related to data, but that also have issues relating to non-conformity with other requirements like citing and other operational requirements. Kevin, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything relating to South Coast procedure.
Yeah, I guess I could say, we have a similar corrective action process overall, different terminology, but I try to look at it as not a punitive process, but a learning process. So, as far as impacting performance reviews and things like that, we don't push it that way, I guess. I will say that we do copy supervisors and managers on those corrective actions and the response to them before they're approved and bought off on. So I would guess if a supervisor or a manager is seeing that their staff is constantly having problems and not resolving things, then I suppose that could affect their performance review. But that's kind of not how we approach it, I guess, as the QA branch anyway.
Okay, and our final question, kind of a shout out to the ARB audit team. How did ARB manage auditing all sites during COVID last year?
Yay! I just have a major, appreciation for the staff, who rose above and beyond last year in continuing their commitment to helping the entire network and ensuring all of your, data or operations could be checked last year. We did modify our program, and we did discuss with EPA in terms of how, we could prioritize the audit program, where we could still continue to do the oversight that, we are required, but still adhere to the health mandates and the precautionary measures that were imposed on us due to COVID. So last year, we were able to go out as individual, members. The team members went out as individual and did measure all of the ozone and PM audits by flexibly changing the operation, actually traveling in single vehicles, taking the standards, transfer standards for ozone rather than our hefty, audit van, and also the, the PM flow measurement standards. So kudos to the team, and we really we feel proud that we were able to actually achieve what we did, and we hope that it added value to your operations and provided more certainty to the data collection procedures, and if there were issues formed, that they were able to provide the feedback to correct them sooner, before they became larger data issues, potentially providing vulnerabilities for larger chunks of data to be invalidated. So Ranjit, Puller, and the team members, thank you.
So that does it for the questions. Thank you to all the panelists and all the questions we received. And kicking it back to, is it Leah?
Leah's in the next session, so we will see you all there.
Thanks, everybody.
We did overshoot. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Much
it.
appreciated.